Hello everyone, in this video I am going to show you about two chess tactics, the pin and the skewer. I am going to first show you a few examples and then I'll do some puzzles on Lichess related to them. So let's start. So the most important thing about both skewers and pins is that they can only be done with three pieces: rooks, bishops and queens, because they're the only pieces that can attack in a straight line. Like rooks and queens can attack horizontally and vertically, and bishops and queens can attack diagonally. So only straight lines. First I'm going to tell you about the pin. So a pin is basically like let's say the Italian game. I'll give an example from an opening because that's a bit easier. B3, knight f6 and bishop g5, and this is a pin because the knight cannot move, otherwise the queen would go. Pins are of two types: absolute pins and relative pins. This is a relative pin. Absolute pins happen when the king is the piece behind, and pins are basically a not so valuable piece and a very valuable piece are in a straight line, and a piece of the other side attacks the less valuable piece in that line only, so that if the less valuable piece moves, the more valuable piece falls. Now if the king is the more valuable piece, it is called an absolute pin, because then the piece which is pinned cannot move at all. Whereas if the piece that is the more valuable piece is not the king, then it is a relative pin, because the knight, like in this case, the knight is pinned but it can move, but that would not be a good move because you would lose your queen. Losing your queen is not very good. So now I'm going to give an example. So suppose this is the position, it's black to move. Black plays knight f4 thinking it's a fork, and so here you can use the pin to get out of danger. So knight f4, and there is a pin, there's a fork here, but now you can play either queen f3 or rook f3. Queen f3 is safer. Now the knight is now pinned, so it can't take the rook, and it's an absolute pin, so you can't take the rook at all. And if suppose you do not move out of the pin here, so the best move for black, now you have to get out of the pin because it's an absolute pin. If you do not get out of the pin, let's say you just play some random move, rook g8 suppose, then after g3 the pinned piece is attacked to the pawn, and because it's an absolute pin, the piece cannot move, and so the knight will fall. White will win material instead of losing it, which it was going to if it hadn't gotten a pin. Now another example, this is like how you can mate using a pin, how you can use a pin to your advantage. um, so here you see that the d7 pawn is pinned to the king using because of this bishop, and it's an absolute pin. So if you look around here, you won't see really any way to make progress. You might just think rook f1 or something like that, but the best move here is queen takes d7 check. Now if the king goes to b8, of course queen takes d8 is a mate. If the queen takes, the only other legal move, you will now see that this queen is now pinned to the king, and it's an absolute pin because of the bishop on g4. And rook e8 is mate because the king has nowhere to go, and the queen, which is the only piece which can block, is pinned. So that is a pin, and a skewer is kind of the opposite of a pin. It's basically the opposite of a pin only, that the more valuable piece is in front. Again, skewers are of two types: absolute skewers, relative skewers. Absolute skewers are if the more valuable piece, which is in front, if that is the king, and if it's not the king, then it's a relative skewer. So both So just related to that, both of the pins that I showed you in these examples, they were absolute pins. Now the skewers that I'm going to show, those are relative skewers, just so you get an idea. Okay, so over here, black to move, and black does not see anything happening here. Black just plays c5, trying to attack on the queen side. But over here, this, if you're white, you see that this knight is unprotected except for the queen. So if the queen would suppose to move away from this diagonal, then the knight is lost, and uh, if the knight is attacked, and so bishop f3 is the best move. It's a skewer because the queen and the knight are on the same diagonal. Bishop attacks that diagonal, the queen is in front, the queen moves, let's say to e6, and the pawn is lost. But over here also black is not, you have to be careful with white, because rook e8 might come and you're getting back ranked if you don't pay attention. So just play h3, something like that. And yeah, one more example. Here black tries to just get the rook to an open file, rook e8, and that's again a bad move because bishop b5 and it's a pin. Now black will only be an exchange down if after rook takes, after like rook c e6, bishop e8 and rook e8. Black is only an exchange down, but yeah, the game will like go on here. And I think that, in my own opinion, pins are more common compared to skewers, but skewers are more common in endgames, pawn and rook endgames, only those. So let's see that this is the position. It's white to move. Now it looks like black is winning this pawn race. I had mentioned this position in my pawn races video also, similar video. It looks like black wins the pawn race here because h5, a3, h6, a2, h7 and a1 queen. But because it's a rook pawn and the king is on the same diagonal, after this white queen, it's a check, and when the king moves, the queen will be lost. Black's queen will be lost. Another example in endgames. Let me just set it. Yeah, so this is rook and games. Yeah, so let's say the position is somewhat like this, and yeah, so the position is like this, and in such a position with black, it's well known that black should keep their pawn, their king, sorry, on, should just shuffle their king between these two squares, g7 and h7, because if the king goes to f7, this is where we can use a skewer, because now we play rook h8. If you just black just ignores it, then the promotion's happening. And if you take the pawn on a7, which is now hanging, there is rook h7, which is a skewer. The king will move and the rook is lost. So that is a few ways in which you can use skewers and pins. Now I will do some puzzles on Lichess and show you. Okay, so this is the first puzzle. First I'm going to do pins. I'm going to try and do 5 correct answers for each type of puzzle. So yeah, white to move, and what you want to do here is you want to find the pins and you want to exploit them. exploit them. So and I am actually recording this again because I got a lot of questions from last time. So this kind of seems like, yeah, so this queen moved here to h5, attacking our queen, and the only defender is this bishop, but this bishop is pinned to the king and it's an absolute pin, so we can just take queen takes h5, And now after bishop takes g3, just move your queen out of the way. Don't take this because, yeah. But actually, where do we move our queen? Yeah, queen d5. We're attacking the rook. So now you'll have to sacrifice so that you don't lose it too much material. Okay, this knight is pinned. We will. How can we? Maybe. Oh, yeah. So, thing is, knight takes c6. It looks as if this rook is defended by the knight, but it's actually not because the rook is pinning it to the king. It's an absolute pin. So, there's just rook takes g7. And now we can't take here, that would be an illegal move. So, we take the knight and then we take this rook. Okay, this one is pretty easy. So we go here, we take knight e2, and if this queen didn't exist, it would be a double check. Just imagine this queen doesn't exist. Knight takes e2 would be a double check, meaning the king has to move. But because then the queen would be pinned to the king anyway after knight e2 here normally. So we play knight e2, the king comes to f2, trade the queens, and after taking the rook is lost. So that not just oh okay yeah. So here if you don't see this queen, if you even if you don't see this queen, it looks like this bishop is hanging, and it actually is hanging because you take, if the queen takes back, there's bishop to c5 and that pins the queen. So takes and pin. I'll take, no problem. Okay, I'll try and do 5 of each theme. This is the last one, if I get this correct. So, yeah, okay, I think I got this one. It's a bit tricky. I think we go queen f4 check. If you take the pawn, then there's rook d8, which is the pin. If you play b3, we take this knight. And if you go to e2, which is something I don't know what I should do then. I think after that I promote. If you take, I take. No, no, no. No, that's not correct. For puzzles, okay, just one tip for puzzles normally. Even if you have one move and it works for every possible response except for one, you have to be sure of every possible response. So don't play that move. Just think. So right now what I've done is queen a4, and the king comes to e2. Now what do we do? Maybe we play rook d8 anyway. Yeah, okay, I think we can play rook d8 anyway. Okay, it took. So rook d8, that's a skewer. Knight takes f8. Oh wait, yeah. We have done 5 for pins, so now we'll move on to skewers. Skewers, first thing I see, this rook f5 is a skewer. And you lose the rook. Okay, that was pretty easy. Find the best move for black. Okay, so this is a skewer. We play rook d7. The king has to go to e4 because if it goes to the c file, then the rook is lost because the king can take it. And the king goes to e4, rook e7. Now the rook is lost. It won't matter if the king came here also because the king defends us. So h3, skewer again. Yeah. So now you look at this bishop, you look at this rook, and you want them to team up. So bishop b7 looks pretty nice, but then the king runs away. It goes to d7 and it runs away. So the way you stop it going on d7 is you play bishop to f5 check, king goes to d8, and rook b8 is a skewer and you win the rook. Now, but like be careful, e4 might come and your rook is hanging, but so just take this thing. Don't take that other pawn. Um. Okay, so question here is whether we should go to h8 or h7. Now we'll just think. If you go to h8, there's this rook and it goes all the way down and it mates us on e8, not e7. It mates us because it's protected. It doesn't mate us, but it's bad for us. So we just go king d7. Why do you want to let it do that? So that happens, and you can just skewer the king and pick up the rook. Okay, last puzzle, which looks pretty easy again. It's kind of a double skew. It's a skewer pin. Okay, I've never seen that before. Skewer pin. So what happens here is we play bishop g7, queen is skewered. Now we pick up this, and it's also with the tempo because we win the rook. And one thing, if the queen came to d6, it's another skewer, and now there's no way to protect. If you take, then the queen goes back. And that was all for this video. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.